Good Wednesday to you, everybody, in Com 831. Welcome to week, boom, 4. How's everybody doing? Okay, you should be well settled in to the rhythm of the semester by now. So, speaking of which, mm, wow, coffee with lots of mess. Sorry about that. Mm, Much better. Okay, I am here, your sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor, to go over this week's posting or assignment, and then we're taking a look at the discussion from last week. We are switching books. Okay, we are starting. Where is it? It's never where I want it when I want it. We are starting Tapscott and Williams Macroeconomics, which I think you're going to enjoy. Um, the book is a little dated. It's about 10 years back, but the principles therein are still valuable to you. Okay. So we're going to start by reading we're going to read chapters 1 through 4. But whenever you get into a book, read the introduction, read the if there's a preface or there's a statement from the author. If you can get a sense of what the author is up to before you start reading, especially when you're reading for information, maybe you enjoyed Everything Connects so much that you just read it for the, sheer enjoyment of the work. And there are some works that I place in that category. And in fact, some works that I read just for the language. Now see here, I actually have one. Here's one, for instance, Barry Lopez. This work, Arctic Dreams. He's such a beautiful, beautiful writer that I just love how he uses the language. So when I read something like that, I don't pick it up when I have a lot of work to do. I don't pick it up when I'm hurried. Okay, maybe I'll take a glance at certain passages now and again when I need to sort of focus my mind on my writing, or I need a little pick me up. Normally though, I'll even wait for times of the year in which I have a good chunk of time to read it at my leisure, so that I can absorb what it is the author is up to. But when I'm reading for primarily information, I always start with the preface and things like that. And to that end, I've given you a link to a short book review of the book, so you can focus in on what's going on in there. Okay. Uh, as with week 3, you should be busy working on part 1 of your papers, because that assignment, and it is, although, to be very clear, we're not doing 2 papers. We're doing 1 paper in 2 parts, but that is a legitimate assignment. And no, it's not a draft of the paper assignment. Okay, I can't give you meaningful feedback on draft work. All right, and that is due on the 29th, which is less than 2 weeks. All right, so if you're not already drilling down into it, you need to be. Get at it. Okay, let's take a look at the questions from last week that focused on the last chapters and epilogue of Everything Connects. Question 1. Excuse me. One of the exciting ideas in chapter 8 is how to cultivate curiosity to generate good ideas. Provide an example of where you did this or observed this taking place in an organization in which you were a part. Now, I want to suggest to you that this is significantly more important than you may know. That is, cultivating curiosity, cultivating how your mind works. There is a I don't have time to go into it for this video. And I'm writing, pulling together a series of essays that I've written and published in various places, and there are one or two of them that I'm writing brand new. And depending on how flexible the editors are, I may publish these in a magazine prior to publishing them in the book. We'll see. Because when you publish with a magazine, unlike, say, an academic publication, and you get paid, you don't get paid for academic publications. You typically sign a contract in which you sign away some portion of the copyright for that article, meaning you can't just take it and publish it somewhere else. And if you do, you have to get permission from the magazine, and they usually want some kind of compensation because they paid you compensation, and that sort of thing. So I'm about whether how many more of these I want to publish, because I've already had to negotiate my way around a number of them to secure the rights, to get my rights back to publish them in a book form. But anyway, I'm going to put a little water now in my empty coffee cup. One of the articles that I'm writing concerns the benefits of being out in natural spaces. And there's a lot of neuroscience behind placing yourself in an environment that is neurologically unfamiliar, an environment that provides you with a lot of stimuli. So this could be out in a park, okay, or this could be, say, in a museum that is cultivating intellectual curiosity, or this could be reading something that's new or different, or learning a language. There's this explosion of cognitive effects within the cognitive sciences that they're discovering that comes from that, even up to and including the prevention and or regression of certain neurological diseases through the exercise of new inquiry. So they're finding, for instance, that Alzheimer's and dementia can be staved off or slowed down with exercises that cultivate curiosity. Because we often hear about the mind body and the spirit body. Okay, see, Christians have led the way on this for a long time. So you got to get your head right, and this is germane to you as communication professionals. The mind and body are so interwoven. I mean, they're like threads. Maybe they're a different color, but in the same tapestry, in the same carpet. And if you pull them apart, the whole, this is the sum of the parts, falls apart, doesn't exist. So I want you to not think about mind or body, but think about them as an integrated whole, which goes back to, and you've heard this from me, before, the Christian worldview, and that is one of interdependency. We are interdependent upon one another. We're interdependent upon our relationship with our Creator as a created being. Our lives are made possible through dependency. And so that there's this dependency between the mind and the body. This is why, for instance, Christians, have a notion that it's of sin that involves the physical self. Okay, and it's tied to action. It's what comes out of you. Okay, so think about that integration when you're thinking through communication scenarios. In fact, if you're not familiar with this, look up the philosophical school or trend, if you like, that because you can say, the philosophical school of nihilism or of communism. Okay, look up phenomenology. Okay, and Heidegger was the. Do I have some? Yeah, I do actually. Here I have a little work about Heidegger. Heidegger, who was German, was one of the formers of phenomenology. And phenomenology is a school of philosophy that looks at the world and says, look, there is an objective reality. Okay, so let's get that straight, first of all. There's an objective reality. However, someone's interaction with that reality becomes their framework, their how they look at the world, which in the minds of many becomes the reality. And that interaction, okay, is driven by the past experiences of the individual, which drives the future expectation. And that in itself, past experience, future expectation, when the individual encounters something in the physical reality, shapes what the thing, and I said shapes, or I should say forms what the thing is, what that thing means to that individual by way of reality. Let me see if I can give you a quick example. I'm looking for an envelope. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. I think I have some here. So, and here's this is one of the classical examples that's given. Let's say, I think this example, if I remember the author, it's given by Jordan Peterson. All right, so I have in my hand an envelope. Okay, I write a lot of letters. I may write a lot of emails, but back to my main interest as a communication professional, semiotics. That is what symbols mean. And those of you who had me last summer, we talked a little bit about that. Written communications carry certain weight as symbols that electronic communications don't. So I write a lot of letters. Okay, anyway, so let's say, and here's the example that's given. Let's say that we have someone, and she applies to medical school. Okay. And she waits and waits, and then she gets the reply in an envelope, in a letter from the medical school. All right, what is that thing? Is it merely an envelope with a letter inside, or based on what this person has done and what this person projects that she might do, does that object take on a different meaning? So it's not merely this piece of paper which holds another piece of paper. It's something much different. And when she opens it up and reads the letter, and it's either congratulations so-and-so, or we regret to inform you that, congratulations, you've been admitted. We regret to inform you that you haven't. The third element of phenomenology says that how you encounter the thing then alters your perception, your experience of past, and your expectation of future. So let's say, and it's neutral. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's a benefit or a hindrance to the individual. So let's say the letter says, congratulations, Smith, Mrs. Smith, we're pleased to announce you've been admitted to blah, blah, blah medical school. Mrs. Smith now, or Ms., I suppose she's young. Ms. Smith now thinks, Wow, I put in all that work as an undergraduate. I'm so glad that I did. All that sacrifice, all those nights that everybody else wanted to go out, and I stayed and I took all those classes. I studied hard in those chemistry classes and those math classes. It was all worth it. I did everything right as an undergraduate. That's her past. And then now in the future, Ms. Smith imagines herself entering school, is nervous, can see herself in first year, whether she sees herself in a positive way, that is, I got this, I can handle class, or in a negative, unsure way, I don't know. But let's say it's a rejection letter. Dear Ms. Smith, we regret to inform you that, despite your stellar application, you have not been accepted to blah, blah, blah medical school. Sorry, she's young. Her experience of her undergraduate has been changed. She says, I spent all that time studying. I made all those sacrifices. I didn't go out when I was invited by friends. And now her future becomes uncertain. So what phenomenology posits as a philosophy is that the reality that an individual forms, their frame on how they look at the world, is one, constantly evolving, it's not static, is two, significantly driven by their past experience, future experience, and three, in relationship to the items, the physical items they encounter. And it can be different for different individuals in the same space, because you think about a space. Okay, we'll go back to cultivating curiosity here, because this all ties together. Okay, think about a space. So there's a museum in Kansas City that I really enjoy. It's across the street from a school that I used to work at for a number of years, the Art Institute of Kansas City. And it's the Nelson Atkins Museum. It's really a phenomenal museum, especially for just right in the middle of the country. I've been blessed to be able to go through many of the great museums in the Western world. The Louvre in Paris, National Gallery in London, the Uffizi in Florence, the Vatican Museum in Rome, the Met in New York, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which is a phenomenal museum. Anyway, so Nelson Atkins, and it's one of these grand buildings. It's sort of the neoclassical style, and you walk into it, and there's this enormous entryway. I mean, it's almost Greek temple like in its size. Okay, so you think about stepping into a room like that, or an ordinary room, your room, and there are literally an infinite number of objects that could draw your attention. And that meant, when I say infinite number, I mean everything from any given book on the back of the shelves, to the cracks that might be present in the ceiling, to the texture of the floor. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. Okay, why? Phenomenology seeks to understand, do certain people focus on certain things? This is where it loops back to you as a communication scholar. If you haven't already, familiarize yourself with the school of phenomenology, because one of your central tasks as a communication professional is to figure out what is the perspective that a given group has that is the foundation of their, and I'm hesitant to say their reality, but their interpretation of the space that they're in, that functions as their reality. Because we're not relativists as Christians. We don't say everybody's reality is different and that's reality. No, we're talking about experience juxtaposed against objective physical reality. So when you cultivate curiosity, okay, you stimulate that process, that phenomenological process, within yourself. All right? Make sure that you do that. Okay? And if you go out to a natural space or if you go into a creative space, the neuroscience behind it, I mean, some really, really exciting studies emerging, demonstrates that there's an actual resetting of your brain waves. So out in a natural space, we're going to get to your examples here in just a second. Out in a natural space, for example, I mean, most of the time, our brain waves are made up of a spectrum of different sort of waves. Most of the time, the dominant wave is what's called a beta wave. And beta waves are found when we're in a heightened state of stress, alertness. Alpha waves are the waves that are found when we are calm, focused. Alpha waves characterize the state that's often described as flow state. And we have really good research that shows that you can take just about anybody, pull them out of their normal environment, put them into an environment that is stimulating, like say a natural environment, and within 3 days, the dominant neuro wave switches from beta to alpha. And those who come out of that natural experience of being out in a wild space, they experience a heightened level of relaxation, of focus, of creativity, and of clarity of purpose. Okay? So if you don't cultivate curiosity, the switching within your brain from beta to alpha waves is the primary reason that you should. Sarah, what did you have to say about this? In chapter 8, Hokenbar, right? The less we were wrapped up in our own thinking, the more we notice about the world. And this is the switch from beta to alpha. And they describe a kind of attending to experience as curiosity. That idea resonates with me deeply because of my own journey growing up in a non-religious household. Faith was present, but not really practiced. We said a dinner prayer. I can relate to that. But there wasn't much discussion about God. Because of that, religion felt like something distant, something that I hadn't truly experienced as I ventured into the world. I became curious about what faith looked like and who God really is. Today, being a student's experience today, being at Bible college where spiritual formation is emphasized alongside academics, I found that curiosity has become a pathway for growth. I learned about God not only through scripture, but also through my student experience and the way they share God has guided them. Lately, I've been telling myself, never stop being curious about Christ and to lean into the wonders of his work. I find myself asking, I wonder what will happen if I trust God. I wonder what he has in store for my life. I wonder what he meant when he said this. The wonder has shaped my curiosity into a deeper faith, drawing me closer to him in ways I never expected. Okay, well said. Well said. And you know, it's funny you say that, Sarah. I do something very similar. Part of what draws me out into natural spaces, into wild spaces, is that it blows my mind, the majesty of God's creation, and including, and you know, not to be egocentric about it, but including myself. I mean, I can go out and you know, I mean, I usually find like a spot off the trail. So if somebody happens along, they're not like, ah, what's going on with that guy? And in fact, there are a number of smaller trails near where I live, you know, 5 to 10 miles that I can easily hike within the space of an afternoon. And I'll hike out, and I have spots along them that I know I can be alone with prayer and thought. Usually a cup of tea, not coffee. I like tea on the trail, and I'll sit and I'll relax. I'll move into a state of prayer, and I'll just look around. I'll look at the just absolutely unbelievable beauty of the formation of the trees and how the limbs give way, you know, to branches, give way to stems, give way to leaves. And then I can look down and I think, you know, what a marvelous creation, and how the leaves will orient themselves to photosynthesize. And then I can look down at my own hands and experience that same wonder. What a marvelous creation God has wrought. How wonderfully and fiercely made we and all things are. So cultivate your curiosity, cultivate your cultural curiosity, your intellectual curiosity. Now, to cultivate curiosity does not mean to adopt any idea. I mean, just anything that happens to pass along. I mean, when you hear knuckleheadedry, then say, yeah, no, and I don't think so. I mean, I was recently reading a book by an historian. His name is Harari, Harari, called ''Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind." And there's much in the book that's interesting, but then Harari gets to a section in which he just, he goes off the rails. He starts with, he slips into this, well, sex is biological, male and female, but gender is cultural and it's varied over the ages. No, no, it hasn't. In fact, culturally, across time and space, there have been very consistent gender driven activities significantly by biology. In fact, because this is a thing on the internet, the so-called traditional wives or the trad wives. One of the things I find a little more water. I find interesting about that movement is that they are in general not traditional enough. What do I mean by that? Because traditionally within Western society, yes, again through biological design, it's the women that have been primarily responsible for raising children, but they also cultivated interests and industries of their own that took shape and functioned um, around raising the children. So, for instance, the production of cloth. Okay, why did that within the West? Why did that become an industry that was dominated by women? Okay, well, once the sheep were sheared, okay, the wool had to be pulled apart, cleaned, carded, that is, the fibers strung apart, spun into yarn, and then woven into cloth. All of those processes were things that you could stop and start while caring for children. You could have a large pile of wool that you were carding, and this is an essential activity. See, that's the other thing about what traditional roles of women. The things that they did were not superfluous. It was not like, oh, do we have Rice Krispie treats or not? No. These were essential activities because you had to have something to wear. You had to have a means by which to keep the weather out and to stay warm at night, or you were going to die. So the function of these activities meshed well with the raising of children, because you could card wool and just put it down and go take care of Junior. You could do it collectively, that women would get together and then someone would watch the kids while everybody else did this. You could spin into yarn, and then you could weave. And all of these things you could stop and start without penalty to the process. Okay. So I'm reading this book and I'm going, yeah, Harari, you've got some interesting stuff, but you're going off the rails. So if you're cultivating your curiosity and you're picking up other ideas, it's okay to be curious, to be open-minded, but don't let your brain fall out. I mean, if you come across something, that's just not right, call it. And I've yet to decide. I mean, he's sort of on and on about how gender is never set, it's fluid, and it's just simply contrary to the facts, both historically and biologically. I've yet to decide whether I'm going to just put the book down and stop reading, or maybe continue through that section and see if he straightens himself out. Okay, cultivate curiosity, but don't be a knucklehead. Question number 2: do you subscribe to the practice of blueprinting decisions as described, and maybe as laid out in chapter 9? And I wanted, where are you? Because I wanted to see You're not there. Okay, I was looking for somebody's answer in particular. Okay, let's see. Tamara, let's see what you said. According to Hokenbar, blueprinting is to draw lines around and between the different factors that contribute or don't contribute to the success of an idea as it moves into the world. While I do make lists of pros and cons, blueprinting sounds more like in-depth mapping than I do of my decision-making process. My faith is a large part of my decision-making process. I believe in praying about things before decisions are made. And sometimes I even ask God for a fleece or a sign as to which decisions I should go, which direction. Sorry, my mistake. You got that right. Sometimes some decisions may not make logical sense, but they make spiritual sense. Okay. Okay, so you say, okay, let's see, Valerie, let's see. I do subscribe to the practice of blueprinting as outlined in chapter 9, although I have not consistently applied to every situation. Who's perfect? I limit this practice to significant high stakes decisions, assuming that minor routine choices do not require extensive contemplation. It is now evident that expanding this practice and applying it comprehensively to various aspects of decision making is essential. A wider application fosters consistency and improves self-awareness and accountability. Okay, Hoke and Bear assert that blueprinting serves as a documentation for decisions, facilitating the identification of the elements of your identity, your various strategies, your assets you are drawing upon for a given decision. Okay, good. Now, by way, if you were to see that question on an exam, I might even pull bits from one of your answers and say, true or false. This is what your author said concerning blueprinting decisions, or briefly describe what they said concerning blueprinting decisions. So read each other's answers. Okay. Do I do that? Yeah, I do. Do I do it, absolutely consistently? Nah, I don't. Should I? Yes. Because not only, as you point out, Tamara, not only does, or Valerie, excuse me, not only does blueprinting help with consistency in your decisions, one of the things that you ought to be aware of, and especially as a highly skilled communicator, by way of consistency, is the consistency in how you go about deciding what it is that you do. In other words, the consistency of the consistency. And when you blueprint things out, you're going to start noticing patterns in how. And just be open, be value neutral. Don't beat up on yourself. Oh, you should have listened. You should have prayed more. You'll notice patterns of what you do, and then you can connect the pattern of what you did to the efficacy of the outcome. Okay, this is beneficial to you. Question number 3: what is one of the most effective means to create long-term value in an organization? Please give an example of how new communication technology is used to create long-term value. Okay. Charlene, one of the most powerful ways to build long-term value in an organization is to foster a culture of connection and collaboration through transparent communication. Hoke and Bart state in their book, Everything Connects, that communication tools and practices that promote openness, trust, and the free flow of ideas enable organizations to create more value in the long run. They argue that long-term value is derived from strengthening the relationships, driving innovation, and aligning people around shared purpose. One practical example of this is the adoption of workplace collaborative platforms such as Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of these. Monday. This platform provides combinations of chat, video, file sharing, project management, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, good. Now, what I want you to note here, and this might be how it will be framed on the exam, notice that in their book, the process that they encourage companies to set up, that is effective communication, openness, trust, free flow of ideas, is independent of the technology. I mean, especially if you have people dispersed in all different places, something like Microsoft Teams or Monday or Slack or any of these softwares can be useful as a platform, but the process is not platform dependent. Okay, so be careful as you move into the professional communication sphere, because this is often how new software applications are sold, that the application is the efficacy. The application is the efficacy. Okay, think of it like this. If you're in a house and you need to keep warm, all right, You're in a cabin in the woods and it's wintertime and you need to warm up. Okay? It's not the thing, fire, that is going to warm you in a way that solves the problem of being in a cabin and being cold in the woods. It's the application of the thing. So you're in a cabin, it's in the wintertime, you're in the woods, you're cold. Fire in the fireplace, that solves your I'm in the cabin in the woods in the winter problem. Fire in the middle of the cabin floor, that does not solve your I'm in the cabin in the middle of the woods, because now you're in the middle of the woods and I'm in the cabin in the middle of the woods and I'm cold, and now you're in the middle of the woods cold with no cabin because it bloody burned down. It's the application of the process, not the process itself. Don't get fooled. Don't get fooled. Question number 4. What do you think of the proposition in chapter 8 of dating ideas? Okay, this is one that I like a lot. Michelle. And I love how you start yourself. Good afternoon. Please see my post below. And Everything Connects, Hope Bear and Drake explore how to engage ideas in dating in chapter 8. I find this to be interesting and useful because it calls for exploration before making any commitment. Organizations jump to the first idea and spend time, resources needed without considering other alternatives. Dating ideas helps leaders and teams use their imagination, creativity, thinking of ideas as partners instead of jumping straight into commitment. You need to test them to find out if they're a right match. Okay, but remember, what I want you to do is to get at what the thing is. Okay, Emily, I like the idea dating. When reading through the chapter, I honestly reminded me of why I dated and how it led me to my husband. Hey, fair enough. Throughout college and a little after, I dated gentlemen off and on. It's nice of you to say that way. And learned a lot about what I found attractive in a potential husband, as well as what type of partner would help me grow and best my decision. This would also point out to me the ways I needed to grow up so I could be the best wife that I could be. When I married my husband, I told him that I was able to look over each relationship and see how one taught me lessons that we went into another. So similar with ideas. With ideas, it's important to understand the different ideas and compare. Comparing different ideas will help you, the pros and cons of each idea, and help you better educate yourself on which idea might be best. My undergraduate PR teacher used to say that there was not always necessarily the right idea in communication situation, but there is usually the best. Okay, and that's an excellent point, because sometimes, I can tell you from a hard-won experience, especially in crisis communication, it's usually what's the best thing that we can do right now, and then follow up on that and follow up on that and follow up on that. There's not we're just going to do this, crisis averted. No. Okay. And being familiar with different approaches and different ways to think about things, different perspectives on the world, that helps. Remember, as Christians, we're called to be gentle as doves, but subtle as serpents. And what does that mean? Does that mean we sneak around and deceive people? No. That means we are wise to the ways of the world. All right. And that includes we are knowledgeable about the presence of evil, and especially this last week. Geez. Some of you may or may not know I'm the campus faculty advisor for Turning Point USA, the Turning Point USA chapter at Region. And I learned about the death of Charlie Kirk almost in real time. I'm a native of Utah. I know the university well in Orem, Utah Valley University. I'm an alumnus of Utah State, where the alleged shooter was first admitted and given a scholarship. So there was a lot of emotional connectivity. I never met Charlie Kirk personally, but I heard him talk on conference calls and other things. So it's okay to be familiar with different ideas. The one place I would say, especially as Christians, evil is as evil does, and you don't have to dig into it and go, oh, let's find out more about it. Let's become more familiar with it. No, let's not. Okay. You can call evil as it is. If you've never read C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, read that book. Read that book. Because one of the things in the book that jumped out, so this is a human being writing this, but very, very wise C.S. Lewis, author of the Chronicles of Narnia. In that book, it's a series of letters between two devils, two demons. And one of the tactics that the one demon is advising the other to use to catch his intended victim is to spark his curiosity, make him think, lead him to believe. Don't reveal the perfidious nature of evil right away. Just pull back little bits, tease little bits, so he'll become more curious and more involved. And oh well, we better spend some time studying this. And now he's sucked into the occult or into radicalization, in which finally, within the space of about a week, at least according to the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk, he made up his mind to crawl on a roof with a rifle and carry out this horrible deed. Okay. So that's the one area in which I advise caution about idea dating. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed week. Please, if you haven't, dig into the part 1 of those papers. And if you have questions, reach out to me during office hours or send me an email. Okay. I think about you a lot. I pray about you, and I will see you on campus. Bye-bye.